start talking too much. Thank you for joining us for our summer webinar as part of our Great Lakes Clean Marina Network webinar series. I'm going to ask Amy and Tracy to come off camera for a minute so I can acknowledge them. We're going to say thank you first to Nicole, our Great Lakes Clean Marina coordinator from Tracy, correct me if I'm going to say, I want to say Indiana, but I think it's Illinois. Illinois, from our Illinois, or excuse me, Indiana Clean
Indiana, yeah.
program. Thank you. I messed it up. So thank you, Nicole, for putting us in touch with Megan, who is our speaker today. Huge thanks to Tracy Coe, who is our Ohio River Basin Program Coordinator for the Ohio Clean Marinas Program, and Amy Tori Reinerhard, who is our Administrative Assistant, for helping us put together this webinar today. If this is the first time joining us, we try and set up a series of webinars, kind of lunch and learns once a quarter for any clean marina folks in the Great Lakes or across the country. And so we're really excited to have Megan here with us today. We hope if you are joining us for the first time today, you consider joining us in the future. You can click the link at the bottom, or we'll put it also in the chat, where you can find more information about the Great Lakes Clean Marina Network, which is really just a group of folks across the Great Lakes who are helping rise clean marinas, promote clean marinas, and share resources and information so we can help keep our waterways clean. So today we are focusing on stormwater, and I'm a self-proclaimed stormwater nerd, so I'm really excited for this. We have Megan Ballard joining us from BNS Civil Engineering. Megan graduated from Ball State University with a BS in Natural Resources and Environmental Management and has 20 years experience working in the environmental field. Her passion for working in the water resources field developed from the time she spent growing up in northeastern Indiana, where she enjoyed swimming, boating, fishing, and being outdoors. As a volunteer, she supports local water quality initiatives and participates in events in Indiana focused on educating the public about the importance of protecting our water resources. Megan now works as a stormwater specialist with Butler, Fairman, and Sofert, where she is currently working with communities in the implementation of the municipal, construction, and industrial stormwater compliance assistance. That's a lot. I just work on industrial stormwater, so I can respect that's a lot on your plate, Megan. So thank you for taking your time out of your day to join us today. And with that, we will pass it off to you. For our marina owners, I'm going to stop sharing, and Megan, you can bring up your slides. There is a Q&A for all of our attendees, sorry, not just marina owners. There is a Q&A button at the bottom. We are going to save questions for the end, so we're going to let Megan present. If during her presentation you have questions that come to mind, please use the Q&A to submit your questions, and then we will kind of go through those, compile those, and do a Q&A session at the end. So thank you again, and Megan, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Sarah. Hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all today. As mentioned, I'm going to be sharing a focus message on stormwater management at marinas, where here in Indiana, we have the smallest territorial waters of any of the Great Lakes states, spanning just 45 miles of Lake Michigan shoreline. And throughout Indiana, there are 89 marinas that participate in the Indiana Clean Marina program. So the purpose of today's webinar is to share insights in stormwater management at a marina. And to do that, we're going to be focusing in on three things. So first, I'll run through some information that will help you comply. I'm calling this section the Compliance Assistance section of the presentation. And then I'll share on employee training and public education. But before we do that, you may be wondering, what is my connection to marinas? So as shared in the intro, it all started back with the time that I spent as a child on lakes. And this is where my passion for spending time boating, swimming, fishing converges with my career and heavy interest in helping by finding ways to make it easier for you all to meet the requirements. So early on in my career while working for the state, a coworker of mine had visited several marinas, and she found concerns related to the storage of chemicals and materials and just general housekeeping. So of course, back then there weren't as many resources available as there are now. And since then, really the stormwater programs have come a long way, which makes complying with the requirements easier. So throughout my career, I've visited a lot of different facilities. And out of all those visits, I felt a deep connection to the marinas. So before jumping into these three focus areas, I just want to make sure we all know what is meant by stormwater runoff. So it refers to rainwater or melting snow that flows over land surfaces without infiltrating into the ground. And in natural landscapes, much of this water is absorbed by soil and vegetation. However, on shoreland properties or developed properties with impervious surfaces like rooftops, driveways, landscaped areas, and compacted soil, the water cannot penetrate into the ground, so that leads to increased runoff. Let's briefly introduce the Industrial Stormwater General Permit, or for short, the ISGP. But since there are attendees on this webinar from several states, I will not focus specifically on your state's requirements, but just generally on what is required by an ISGP. So the first line of defense is the SWIP, or the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, and this provides the framework for protecting the receiving water body from harmful pollutants, which may come from operating a marina and stormwater coming in contact with those activities and materials. So the next requirement is the visual assessment, and this is where our states vary on this requirement. So this helps us keep in check with the SWIP and ensure our implementation of the plan is working. So when we see something when conducting a quarterly visual assessment that doesn't look right, we can take action and we can prevent that issue from causing any further harm. So these assessments are typically done during a rain event and are recorded and kept on file within the SWIP reporting records. They may be requested during an audit or even to be submitted annually within your report. But the quarterly inspections, although they might only be required quarterly or monthly, there is a general acknowledgement that there's daily observations and informal actions that are taken based on your daily observations. The third item listed here is benchmark monitoring, and this is really a sample that's going to be collected, and then it's going to be analyzed in a lab, and it's going to measure the concentration of pollutants that are present in that stormwater runoff at a marina. So this is done during a rain event, and then the samples are collected from your representative outfall or outfalls. And then when you receive those results back from the lab, you'll compare those to a numeric value, and that's going to be determined by your permit. The last item on the list is our annual employee training requirement and the annual reporting requirement. Of course, those are both done each year. And the annual report itself will include like dates of inspections, deficiencies, corrective actions, and any SWIP improvements. And I will go into a lot more detail on the employee training later on in this presentation. So now let's get into the three focus areas that we're covering today. To best provide the information related to compliance assistance, I thought we could do a brief virtual inspection where I cover what one looks for when conducting a quarterly facility inspection. Of course, every site has unique considerations, such as the operations and activities that are specifically conducted at your marina, as well as the materials and the transferring of those materials and the general topography of the site. We'll also take into consideration, as a stormwater specialist reviewing a site, the space restrictions. And this presentation will go over generally basically what to expect. So in the next slides, I'll share the common activities as well as the potential pollutants and related BMPs. So the first common activity we will cover is maintenance, and this includes painting, pressure washing, sanding, and engine maintenance and repairs. And oftentimes maintenance activities are conducted outside, so they're exposed to rain and typically right next to a waterway. As one can imagine, these activities can generate various potential pollutants, including those listed on this slide. And when any of those listed potential pollutants are mobilized by stormwater and they reach a waterway, the effects can be detrimental to fish and macros living within that waterway, as well as limit our uses of the waterway for recreation and or utilization as a drinking water source. So as for BMPs, I've listed the most important and most likely to apply to many of you. So let's review a few of those options. First up is confining the operations to a designated area. By designating a specific area, we're able to limit those activities to that controlled area and aid in keeping the grounds clean and safe for all users and visitors. However, by having these designated areas, we find that it is hard to police them at times. But as long as you provide education to the boaters and the visitors and on these rules and provide also easily accessible spill kits for those areas, in the event of a spill, basically the concerns are lessened. So as long as we provide the education on those designated areas and access to the tools, those concerns of policing those areas are lessened. So the last item on the list is barriers. And so this is referring to like berms and channels, buffers, and drain covers. So this will best contain any unintentional spill or release and prevent it from entering a waterway immediately, allowing for you to take some steps for cleanup actions if there's a spill or a release. The next activity that I like to cover is fueling. Obviously, this is a must for all boaters or most boaters. And again, this is done on the water, right next to or on the water, so you can't get any closer to the source. The potential pollutants include the fuel, oil, and heavy metals. And again, anytime these listed potential pollutants are mobilized by stormwater and they reach a waterway, the effects are detrimental to the fish and the macros living in the water bodies, as well as limiting our waterway uses for recreation and or drinking water. The BMPs that are important to note is to always have those spill kits readily available and labeling those spill kits so that they're easily found and accessible by your staff. And then the staff who are doing the fueling for you at your marina, make sure that they're getting the proper training, not only to respond to a release, but also just in general as fueling, training the staff to tip the nozzle upwards and not allow it to drip into the waterway, as well as the potential tools that you can incorporate, like a bib or an absorbent towel, and that'll help prevent that fuel from going right into the waterway during those activities. So the best thing that we could do if we had space is to incorporate a stormwater treatment practice, which could be a bioswale or a vegetative area for the stormwater to go to and then be treated prior to reaching the water body. So now we'll discuss chemical storage. So this may be storing used oil or antifreeze, and of course, providing a place for these materials to be collected and properly stored is a must. So this picture was taken early on when I was working with a marina, and they added signage for the patrons to properly place their used oil and antifreeze in those totes. And the marina actually provides this service to help the boaters and ensure the right thing is done with the used oil. And then the marina also has a local company come in and pump out the totes for recycling, as well as they'll service those drip trays beneath those totes. The most common pollutants are oils and heavy metals and ethylene glycol. And the most common BMPs include clearly labeling all containers in properly storing these materials. So we're discussing used oil and used antifreeze, but there's other potential chemicals that could be stored. So if you're storing flammable liquids, of course, those flammable liquids should be stored in a flammable cabinet and then properly containing all fluids that are stored outdoors in appropriate a container and having secondary containment to prevent the spills due to a failure or a rupture will help prevent that from reaching the waterway. And then just a little note on secondary containment. It should always be greater of 10% of the total enclosed tank volume or 110% of the volume contained in the largest tank. Again, having spill kits nearby and proper signage is huge for chemical storage as a number one BMP. So next up is pesticides. This includes insecticides, herbicides, and fungicides. The photo is of a Purdue agricultural pesticide storage area, and I assume you won't have this much on site. However, utilizing those mini tubs beneath as secondary containment and storing indoors is best. Of course, the potential pollutant associated with this is the pesticide itself. The chemical is, if it reaches a waterway, is highly toxic to the aquatic life. And then when we talk about BMPs, it's really about applying the pesticide at the right time and under the appropriate weather conditions. So we don't want to apply it right before a rain where it will run directly into the waterway. And then also utilizing only what is necessary. So don't over apply or have more than necessary or more often than necessary applied. That will limit the interaction in what could run off the property and reach a waterway. And then if we can, we trying to incorporate those non-chemical pest control methods whenever possible. So this might be like a pest-resistant plant that will also lessen the amount of pesticides that have to be used. And then following and hiring trained individuals, following those label instructions for the pesticide use, including disposal, that will really help make sure that all the chemicals are only used as needed and not in excess. So boat washing. This is a frequent discussed topic at marinas. There are challenges associated with containment and treatment of wash waters and separation between boat washing and the water bodies. The wash waters are not allowed to be discharged without prior treatment. And then marinas do prohibit boat washing in the water. There's also ways to collect and treat the wash waters themselves. As we know, detergents have those detrimental effects on aquatic life. So similar to maintenance, the most common and most beneficial BMP is to include a designated area for all washing activities. So that's where the wash water is collected and conveyed to a treatment plant or another method of treatment. Also having nearby spill kits available for use and then signage directing the visitors and users to the locations to obtain any spill response equipment. Of course, training your personnel on site on how to observe to activities and know if that activity is not being done in the proper area to where we might have uncontained wash waters, and then being able to provide them with the education to address an unauthorized discharge is key. And of course, lastly, disposal of the wash waters to the right treatment, basically after collection, going to a treatment plant or some form of treatment prior to discharge is required. So there are marinas who create that designated area to collect all that water, and the collection system will then take it to the treatment. But there's also technology that allows for like a valve to be turned to close the collection system off, and that would allow stormwater to be separated, and then it would not enter that collection system and it could continue on its normal path when washing isn't occurring. So waste management, this is our last activity that we're going to cover today prior to going into the next two topics of our three-topic presentation here. So the waste management is another common activity that must be addressed at all marinas, all facilities for that matter, that generate waste. So a marina will have that normal trash that's generated by the visiting public, and likely there'll be lots of trash receptacles. Flowable trash is a floatables risk because it can injure aquatic life, and then also trash can block waterways and paths of water, which lead to localized flooding and be an aesthetic issue. So think of water with a waterway with trash in it. If you were wanting to swim or visit or fish in that water, I think I would probably choose something without trash in it. So it's definitely something that we aim for. The most common BMPs are extremely inexpensive, and this includes trash containers with lids and that are in great condition or good condition. So it prevents the waste from migrating by wind, but also from that container to have that leachate allow that to the trash juice to leak onto the ground and then into the waterways. So also other BMPs include frequent trash pickup and routine monitoring. So as we know, the trash and other waste that aren't controlled, it'll attract wildlife such as gulls and geese, and then that contributes to the pollutant load as well. I do want to note that, you know, if you hold a special event and you have a higher number of visitors than normal, you may have a special event special event cleanup where you have a sweeper come through and pick up some of those small debris, or to basically have an additional trash pickup for that. So this brings us to our next main purpose of this training. And as you may recall, when looking at marinas back in the early 2000s, we determined there was a need for better training and more opportunities. And then we also know that the stormwater message is more common and there are more resources today. So the annual employee training is a requirement. It's typically at least an hour, and all employees who work in and around the marina should receive this training. The annual training will cover generally the message of raising environmental awareness and informing your employees of what is included in the SWIP, as well as teaching the staff why they're here, why they're doing the activities of the stormwater pollution prevention plan, and what may be behind those inspections and the good housekeeping, or maybe all that extra work that they might get assigned. So the presentation for the annual training typically also includes topics of safety and proper spill response. So there's several ways employees can be trained. Don't think you have to stick to that presentation style training. My personal favorite is in the field training, where the trainer walks with the trainees and teaches them through showing. This provides real life scenarios and opportunities for discussion, which doesn't typically take place in the classroom setting. So it is best fit for inexperienced employees, with inspection included as their responsibility, and is completely customizable. So I highly suggest also holding a separate sampling and monitoring training. This will help inform staff on how, where, and when to sample. And then it also will go over that required paperwork and data that needs to be recorded at the time of the sampling. The trainer can even provide information related to data analysis, which is a great opportunity to learn about ways to adjust the BMPs if the data shows a specific result is outside the expected parameters. So of the three focus areas, we've already covered compliance assistance and employee training. Our third focus area is public education, which is an important topic because public education is how you provide your message to the visitors and users of the marina. And it includes your clean water messages. So it's equally as important to provide this education to the public as it is to your employees. And public education can be accomplished by utilizing signage, such as those shown and provided by the Indiana Clean Marina program. The signage helps manage potential pollutants because if the site is designed with BMPs, stormwater runoff from those designated areas will be treated prior to running off and entering a waterway. So the following slides, I'll share some examples of water quality messaging. So this sign is located within a parking lot at a nearby marina, and it's an interpretive sign. So it explains the stormwater treatment located on site, and it helps educate the visitors and helps them connect with the message the marina is sharing on the importance of stormwater management. So these photos are the installed measures within that same parking lot from the previous slide. So on the left is the rain garden and on the right is the pervious pavement. Do you think most people would understand why the specific plants were put here, or the function of the pervious pavement or curb cutouts if there wasn't a message board? I think most would know why, but I would say most will connect and appreciate the message after learning through that message board. So here's an example of a way to collect waste fishing line. Of course, this prevents it from becoming an issue with wildlife, and it helps educate the public on the importance of properly disposing of waste materials. It also provides an opportunity for recycling the fishing line. And then on this topic, have you ever considered using a mascot? It's a really fun way. It's eye-catching, and you can connect with the visitors through the use of a mascot. We've seen several options for this, of course, of a helpful fish or a friendly bird. We've seen frogs, turtles, water droplets, otters, and then a lot of other marine life to basically be your spokesperson for your educational message. So the two shown here include the river otter for the Richmond's water, and then of course this message is fun, bright, and it's easy to connect with clean water. And then the picture on the right are manatees. and it's the Stormwater logo for the city of Bradenton, Florida. So however you end up deciding to promote your clean water messages, I think the most important takeaway is that it's delivered in a light, fun, appealing, and informational way. So I wanted to thank you all for joining me. I'm ready for questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Megan. That was fantastic. I'm going to share a plug for our Ohio Marinas that might be on the call next Wednesday. Losing track of my days. July 30th. If you haven't received an email, please reach out to us. I'll put our Clean Marinas email in the chat box, but we are having a stormwater pollution prevention plan webinar next Wednesday, where I'm going to go over how to write a pollution prevention plan. So this is a perfect precursor for that. So right now there is a question, will we have access to these slides? So Megan, I'll let you answer that. That's all right.
Yeah, we're gonna offer these slides in a PDF to be shared after this presentation.
Thank you. That sounds good. And I did see, I want to make sure, Tom Reichert, I saw that your hand was raised. I'm going to give you an allowance to talk. I don't know if there was, hopefully it wasn't an issue with being able to access the presentation, but I wanted to, since your hand was up, I wanted to set that up in case. Sounds good. Awesome. I don't have any other Q&A right now. I'm multitasking, but I wanted to say for you, Megan, how much, just in your experience, do you encounter, let's say, like a location that should have a stormwater permit or should be doing monitoring, things like that, and isn't? And how do you handle, like, what do you recommend as the first steps for if they're just like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I needed a permit, and they're trying to get back around on the right track? What would you recommend?
So in Indiana, we have several options for helping, like for instance, a marina or another facility who needs assistance with learning more about the requirements of the permit. We have specialists within our separate offices at IDEM, but in our Office of Water who take care of all of the permitting needs as well as they are regulatory. We also have a section at IDEM who is non-regulatory and is there for the purposes of compliance assistance as well as educating. I previously worked for the state, but I'm now a consultant, and so obviously I'm like here to help in any way possible and like to connect people with those resources as well as run through the requirements and just provide them with an idea of what to expect and a way to put those compliance expectations into their everyday. So they're just making sure that it's easily something that they can incorporate is, I found that to be the most beneficial. So I typically, like to ensure that those that I'm working with I understand they're running a business and they're running an operation, and we want to try to incorporate the compliance assistance into that.
That's good. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'll just add a quick note that 100% my experience has been, and I can't speak for every state, but that being proactive is far better than just taking a risk, and on the chance that somebody sees something, they say something, and then you get an audit or you get, a violation. Being honest, saying, oh my gosh, sorry, I did not know we had to do this. And being proactive, in my experience, works far better than putting risk. We do have a couple questions coming in now. So some of them I think we might be able to answer. Some of them might be something that we can follow up with you.
Hey,
So
Sarah, not to cut you off, but Tom has his hand raised. Thomas Reichert. Let me see if he's able to talk.
Yeah, I set him up to be able to talk, but I don't know if.
Oh, there we go.
No questions.
Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate it.
What?
All right. So we have a question about, I heard you indicate that boats can't be washed while in the water. However, boat discharges are regulated by U.S. Coast Guard and not state stormwater permits. I'll let you answer, and then I might have some clarification there too.
Yeah, so boat washing, meaning with detergents, that is different than the discharges that the person who asked the question is asking about. So yes, apologies for the lack of clarity on that.
Yeah, and just to add additional clarifications, because I think that's very important, Megan. So there's several different things and possibly regulatory activities that are triggered when you talk about boat washing. There's boat washing when you're doing, yes, detergents, when you're essentially cleaning your boat in the water. There's boat washing when you're discharging, say you're doing like boat bottom wastewater discharge, when you're doing power washing the bottom of the vessels, say in the wintertime to prepare for sanding and painting, that is regulated, and that could be an entire webinar itself. And then there is boat washing for invasive species, of which there's a whole slew of research and information and guidance on as well. So I would make a recommendation, make sure you're 100% clear on what type of boat washing you are referring to. And then especially when it comes to invasive species and boat wash wastewater, the regulations are state specific. So you want to make sure you reach out to your state clean marina coordinator or state EPA confidential compliance assistance office that can help guide you on exactly what regulations apply to you. It's a very good question there. Any special BMPs for marinas that offer on-site fueling? I've seen some wave runner rentals that refuel in the lake. Thanks, Megan.
Oh, we see that at several marinas for a lot of different water, well, for the marinas themselves. And I think just having those ways of capturing the potential for the drips and spills on hand is really important. And then oftentimes you've got a spill kit or something to address any type of on land, as well as right there on the water drip or spill. So you can expand, Sarah, if you like.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I'll just second. If they're, I'm trying to multitask. If Amy and Tracy, if any of you can find the Clean Boating Pollution Prevention Kit fact sheet that was done through the Clean Marina Network, I think that would be a great resource to share. So I'll try, and if I can't get to it now, I'll share it later. But yes, so if there is a facility that allows fueling in the lake, you want to have safety and clean boating concerns there and make sure that you are trying your best to mitigate any chance of spills. And I would, yeah, at the very least, recommend, if not require, for the boaters that are out there doing that exactly, to have spill response equipment available so that if there's a spill or anything that can be remediated and taken care of right away. And ideally have training so that it's prevented, doesn't happen in the first place. Absolutely. All right, and then it looks like I'm going to be one from Tracy, and then last one here. I'm a clean boating coordinator in Florida, and I use this information for my clean marina program. Do you have a resource I could readily provide my marinas, such as a website with all this information?
Don't manage this information on a website.
Yeah,
However, yeah.
Yeah, Megan, I don't know if you can think of anything off the top of your head. I know, honestly, on Stormwater, I think there's a wealth of resources out there. One thing I'm going to put in the chat is specific to marinas. The Clean Marinas Network has a Clean Marina Stormwater Toolkit website that has a lot of information and is a great point to start if you're just delving into stormwater. So I'm going to share that link in the chat with everybody here so that you all can have access to that. Very good question. And then Tracy, I know you asked, could you go into just a little more detail about how the boat washing falls under stormwater and wastewater permitting? If you are compliant with wastewater, are you compliant for stormwater? And Megan, you're welcome to take a shot at it, and I can give guidance as for Ohio what we do.
So on land, what we've got several marinas who have that designated area for boat washing, as far as like using soaps and detergents, and or some other type of chemical. So this is basically to maybe you put your boat in, you take it out, you wash it before you leave. So if all of that water's collected and it goes to a collection system, the marina is already stated that they're going to treat that water. And so that if you're meeting your wastewater requirements at that point in time, you're meeting your stormwater collection requirements. When you start to separate it, that's when it gets a little bit more complicated, and you want to make sure that for your specific state, that the parameters that you're trying to address, whether they're numeric values or non-numeric values, that you're addressing those with the type of treatment for the stormwater itself. But by no means should we ever have detergents going to the water body. So the most important thing is to collect that wash water and make sure it goes to a collection system, or maybe even municipal wastewater, or pumped and hauled to a treatment plant.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll just second that. I think the best motto that I constantly try and think is it's using common sense. The slogan "Only rain down the storm drain"
Yeah.
is there for a reason. Stormwater is stormwater, and yes, there's a permit that allows you to essentially pollute by having the stormwater run on your property, pick up non-rainwater materials like oils and gas, things like that, and discharge it to a water body. There's a stormwater permit and best practices in place. But wastewater, which is not rainfall, but it's human-based generating water, it's not Mother Nature generating this water, that's where it's different than stormwater, and it usually has to be handled differently. So when you have it separated and you are doing an activity that's not just Mother Nature, wind, rain, snow, but you're actually doing an activity that generates water running off land into the water and probably picking up pollutants, that's when you gotta again, whole other webinar, whole other conversation, but you need to make sure you're addressing that. So great. Lots of good information here. No, it's a lot of to digest, but again, we're here to help. There's a couple more Q&A. Does that include detergents? And does green equal environmentally friendly? Sorry, does that include green detergents? So I'll let Megan speak, and then I have my opinions on that too.
Well, it's complicated. I mean, the truth of it is it's a grayish area, because we have things that are promoted by companies that say natural or green, biodegradable. That doesn't mean it can go into our waterways. So, back at when I worked at the state, and this is just an example, that was given to me when I was a lot younger, and it made sense. So actually several stories are coming to mind, but I'll stick with one. So, we drink milk, or, but that's one of the worst things that can reach a waterway. You'll instantly kill everything in it. So not that we're drinking detergents or anything green. I'm just saying, if you think of it as not, a potential, item that would hurt you, and you put it in the waterway, it's still potentially going to hurt you. So there are things that are called eco and green, and for the state of Indiana, we still don't allow those to be discharged into our waterways.
Yeah, and then I'll just add green could equal environmentally friendly, but be very, very careful, because there are a lot of companies that it's not very well regulated as far as a company being able to claim that they're eco-friendly or green. And so like I've got some fire marshals and Coast Guard folks that they'd rather have you use a teaspoon of Dawn carefully and managed, and if it works, or like Simple Green. I've heard a lot of people talk about, again, in small amounts and small quantities, extremely diluted upland. That's a much better practice than using half a bottle of some eco-friendly, not very effective cleaning product on the water. And that may still, in large quantities, especially if people have to use a lot because it's not as effective, that's almost worse than just using a little bit of the really good stuff and managing the water properly and using best practices to clean it up. So it's kind of common sense thinking about, again, at the end of the day, only rain should be ending up in our waterways. How can we do our best to prevent any non-rain related items ending up in the water, and doing the best we can, understanding nobody's perfect, but yeah. Is there a difference between discharge of boat wash with soap at a private dock versus in a marina? I'll let you, Megan, same thing, if you want to have a shot at that. So I
So,
think the concept is at a private dock versus in a public or like a marina, like a business owned facility.
sure. I think the principle is the same. We want to incorporate, and similar to other stormwater messages, we educate residents as well as commercial businesses, and our municipal governments have municipal stormwater programs. So when we educate, we typically try to get the message out to um, similar audiences. So it's just how they're regulated is what's different. So that information can be shared with them, and those best management practices are still applicable to a private dock owner who washes in the water. And typically, I think the really the go-to answer though is what we want for our waterways, especially, I mean, if you're have a private dock and you go boating, obviously you want to be able to continue to do that. And so what we do within those waterways, or how we treat what goes into those waterways, will have effects on them. And obviously promoting clean water and being able to recreate is our number one priority.
100%. Thank you, Megan. Awesome. Well, I'm going to share that as a follow-up, Amy, I think we'll send out an email to all the attendees with the recording, with more information, all of our contact information, and Megan's contact information, if that's okay. I'm going to close out the questions for now because I think this has been very helpful, but I also want to be mindful of people's time. And the last thing I'm going to do, if we can get my screen to not freeze on me, is to share information about our next webinar that is coming up in the fall. So there will be a QR code. So just getting this up on my screen here. So everybody. So we will have another webinar on October 15th from 1 to 1:30, again, kind of a late lunch and learn. I know it's a little later. Concerning air pollution at marinas, with Tamara Gerard, excuse me, from Ohio EPA. So again, hopefully these are helpful to you. There will be a follow-up survey coming your way when you leave this webinar, and I believe in a follow-up email. So please fill that out so you can help us continue to give you good webinars. I want to say thank you to Megan again for her time and expertise and really good and helpful information today. And with that, thank you all. Hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to stop recording here.